contacted a thru-hiker here in Charleston, South Carolina, that was in the class of 2018. He was the Scoutmaster, and he's graciously agreed to meet me and do a little bit of filming so I can ask him some questions. And I'm gonna go do that now.
With this is it's like having a baby.
Yeah.
Right? If you were to ask a woman that has given birth, you know, while it's happening, they're not thinking about, you know, the joy of the moment. Right. They're upset, they're complaining, they want it over, all this good stuff. And it's the same thing with the thru-hike. That's kind of how you're going to feel.
Right.
And after it's all over, and especially as time goes on, it becomes more and more, you know, oh yeah, that was wonderful. It was the greatest thing I ever did, and all this stuff, because you know the pain of the moment is gone, right? The struggle of the moment's gone. So I want these people to realize when they're in that situation that eventually, if you continue on, okay, eventually you'll get to where I am now, where everything. Oh yeah, it's great. It was wonderful. It was the best experience of my life down there. When I got to Blood Mountain, I remember the day before. Darwin had been there.
Oh, really?
And I remember when I was leaving, he was going to hike that section. So I knew he was a couple days ahead of me. I knew I wouldn't see him and stuff. He'd be a couple days ahead of me. But he had been at the Blood Mountain shelter the day before and had signed in the log.
You were breathing heavy right around in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because
those first 3 days.
The first few weeks, the first week or two.
Yeah, because I flipped ahead at 3 months and you were...
Yeah,
and
that's your trail ice. That's that
aerobic, you were on it.
You know, kick it in. That's the, you know, especially living down here, you have zero elevation. So you add that with the fact you're older, you're not, you know, you're not as in good a shape as you will be, right? All those things. There were plenty of times where I would hike and I might walk, you know, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Stop. And what I would do is I never stopped for long periods of time, but I would stop, catch just long enough to catch my breath, which might have been 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then I would continue on. So on some of the climbs, especially early on, I just kind of pick out a blaze on the tree up ahead, and I was like, okay, I'll hike to that tree. And then I can take a break when I get there. I get there, I take a 20, 30-second break, and then I pick out the next tree. And so there.
And that was going uphill?
Yeah, and that was going uphill. So there were plenty of times where in the beginning, I did that, right? But you keep going. You don't take too long of a break because you'll never get there for that extended period.
I mean, you were in contact with them. So.
Sure, every day I was in contact. Now, some days I couldn't physically talk to my wife because of cell service and stuff. So but with the Garmin, I could always at least text. But, you know, some days it was like, I'm heading out, you know, and then throughout the day, all good. And then maybe at the end of the day, I don't have much service. It's, you know, hey, at camp, you know.
Oh, that was good. So, so you were able to text her whether she could call you back or not.
Right. She always knew when I left the campsite in the morning. When I got to a campsite, I immediately text her, I'm at campsite mile 209.7.
And what did she say about all that when you got back? She liked all that?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I mean, she did. Now, there were plenty of times during the day, sometimes she would text me, and she could track me.
Oh.
So if I was stopped for like 45 minutes, I'd be, you know, what's up? You know, she...
Oh.
I ran into one guy who had the same Garmin. And when I ran into him, he looked at me and said, "You're married, aren't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he pointed to the Garmin.
First day,
But you did pretty good mileage for the first. I mean, you tried to get 3 days. You tried to get to that. You set your targets.
Right.
I noticed you set a target for the day, and then you had a target for your resupply. And
Right.
Trying to get to them.
Right.
But you were doing some pretty good mileage at the beginning. Did that bother you at all?
No. Physically, I felt fine, and having been with the Scouts and stuff, and
I just did the Foothills Trail right in between Christmas and New Year's, and we were doing, you know, we started on the first half day because we drove up there. We did like 8 point something, then we did like 13, 15, 17, and then, you know, another 15, and then, you know, 8. So having, you know, doing those, no, doing 15 wasn't that big of a deal.
Miles a day.
well, for the whole thing, it
Whole
was like
thing.
15 something because I did in 145 days, and that's with 6 zeros. So 139 hiking days.
I had 174 days. It was.
No, it was 145. Yeah, I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
January 30th, finished June 23rd. Whatever they call it. Yeah, it's a nice little bunkhouse. It was $20, and the reason why I stayed there was it was going to rain late that afternoon, and basically then drop to the 20s. So everything was going to ice over. It wasn't going to snow, but it was going to rain, stop raining, then everything was going to ice over. And at that point, I was at Neels Gap. I had 31 miles in, and you have all the
Yeah,
people
you were
saying, "Oh,
moving.
you're going too fast. You're going too." So I'm like, you know, I'm here, and I wasn't necessarily. I was kind of so if I'd stay. And then the guy's like, "Hey, we got bunks for $20 if you want one." And I knew that the other two guys, Loner Boner and the other older guy I was with, they were staying. So I figured, there's gonna be a couple of people here. I'll stay.
Did you have any? What was your favorite piece of gear? Everybody asked that.
Probably, I really liked my backpack. It was comfortable. And
A
I liked my quilt.
And you liked your quilt.
Of
You
course,
used-
with the cold weather, you know.
What degree rating was it? You know.
I had a 0.
You had a 0.
With lighting equipment. I sleep kind of cold.
Right.
So I got the 0 because I was leaving January 30th. I knew the nice thing about that, or February, middle of February,
Right.
is here. You're going to hit snow.
Right.
No doubt about it. All right.
Yeah.
People that live in April, you know, what they're hoping
Right.
for
Is
is
they
that
miss the snow.
they'll miss the snow.
They had
You know.
snow this year though.
And it just depends. They might not. But the
Well, they
problem
did last
is,
year. I don't know
the
if they
problem
did.
is you still have to be prepared for it, though.
Well, did
Leaving
you
it.
keep that blanket the whole way?
Yes.
Oh.
And the last night in the 100-mile wilderness, which was the second to last night before I summited, it got down to 44 degrees
Yeah,
in
nice.
100 miles. So I had that thing. Oh, it was beautiful. I wasn't cold. It was just.
Oh, you're living
nice.
on emotions by then, because you was on.
Oh yeah, and at that point, I loved. You know, there was a few times where I just kind of threw the quilt down by my feet.
Sure.
You know, but usually by 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd pull it back. It'd get a little chilly, but that only happened. I can probably count on one hand the number of times that happened. So that quilt. You know, people think, I'm going to use a 20, then send it home and get a 40. How many ounces are you saving? 2?
Yeah.
Just keep the damn thing the whole way.
Yeah.
Just take 3 days of food.
Well, what did you eat the whole time out there? Like, kind of. You just
I ate, you know, for breakfast
Like
was always the
ramen, that kind of
hardest
stuff?
for me
breakfast.
because I didn't like cooking,
Right.
right? So that was hard for me. And sometimes I'd have oatmeal, sometimes honey buns, sometimes
Oh, because you wanted to get packed up.
granola,
Yeah.
granola bars, stuff like that. Lunch, I would stick to, like when it was colder, I could do a bagel and put like lunch meat and cheese on it, or Spam and cheese on it. When it got warmer, I used the tortillas more when it got warmer, because in the cold they get harder. I didn't like that, hard. But in the warmer months, I'd have those and either put peanut butter on it, or tuna on it, or Spam on it, or something, and chips, you know, for lunch. Now, in the wintertime, a lot of times I walked and ate because it was cold.
Right.
Because you kind of sweat,
Right.
you stop, you bundle up, and then, you know, you're still kind of cold. I know a couple people mentioned on my last video with the Z seat. The reason why I say it's not needed is I didn't want to sit down. It was too damn cold to sit down.
Right.
You know, I got cold.
Yeah.
And then even if you put your jacket on and you kind of warm and you're eating.
You looked cold at the beginning.
Yeah, before you leave, you have to take that jacket off.
Right, right.
And I didn't like doing it. Keep moving, I kept warm.
Well, you started off in the day with your jacket in your pack and just pulled it out when you stopped, or
it depended on how cold it was. I tried to always start hiking a little cold because within 5 minutes I was burning up.
Yeah, was that the first mile or after the first
Right, and I hated stopping after 10 minutes, taking the pack off because you know you got the jacket. You have to take the pack.
How much weight were you using in your pack? Do you remember?
I was 32 pounds at Springer, and that's with 2.5 liters of water and what probably wound up being 4 or 5 days of food.
And you were good with that weight the whole way through?
I mean, I dealt with it. I prefer to be under 30 pounds because that stuff, it gets old. The worst is coming out of town.
We're trying to resupply. And you're climbing out of
And you're climbing. And that's when you're cussing, you know, going into town, you're coming downhill, your packs, you know, you got room in your pack, it feels great. And that's why I tell people, but you need that food. You know, you need that food. So you gotta have that food. So if you can cut back to the other stuff and carry more food, you're better off. But to eat, every 2 hours eat. Even if you don't, you're not gonna wanna, here's the other thing, when you first start off, to Neil's got, you're not gonna eat much.
Right.
And
because your body's trying to get used to it.
Yeah, your body's not used to it yet. So don't take a whole lot of food.
I'm starting to panic a little because it's going to be rough.
But here's and this is what you got to tell yourself. I mean, ultimately, you're at your pace, or if you're going with a buddy, y'all's pace, right? So you just pace.